Well, good morning. As you can see by the carnage behind me, all of the stacked up furniture, we are in the midst of packing up our house and getting ready for the move to the new location that some of my previous videos have been talking about. As a result of that and the fact that it's been about 453 degrees below zero the last several days, I haven't gotten much work done on the shop or out in the garage with the cars. What I'd like to do now is something a little bit different. I want to touch on how I got here as an automotive enthusiast. It's a very simple answer. It all goes back to my father. My father, LD Man, was born in 1934. Got me hooked on cars at an early age because he absolutely was deep into it himself. We built so many cars over the time that he and I were on this earth together that I can't keep up with how many of them that were done. And everything that I've learned and everything that I know regarding automotives can go straight back to him. What we're going to touch on now is we're going to touch on some pictures of the history. These are not all the pictures that I have by a long shot. They're simply stuff that I've managed to get uploaded and scanned in so I can share them electronically. There's much more to come, and I'll probably do another one of these in the future once I get more pictures uploaded. But this is basically just a quick retrospective of where I came from, why I'm a car nut, and why we're here today. This car right here is where it all started. This is a 1932 Ford 512 Coupe, all Henry steel, 100% original steel car. My dad built and rebuilt this car several times over its lifespan. It actually was brought home by him, just the body alone, with the floor rusted out of it when I was 3 years old. I do have pictures somewhere of when this car was first built and 3-year-old me under the hood of it, but this is where it all started for me personally, this Deuce Coupe. Now this car is one of the first fiberglass 1932 Roadsters ever produced. This was Gibbons body number 2 out of the Gibbons Fiberglass Works in Nebraska. My dad, of course, could not afford the price for an all-steel Roadster, as even back then they were bringing a premium. But as you can tell by these old slides here, we built this car and showed it for many, many years, starting back in the mid-70s. All the way up into the mid-80s until my dad finally eventually sold this body in favor of other projects. But this was Gibbons number 2. Now this is an actual all-steel 32 Roadster that my dad had, purchased from a gentleman named Carl Kuhlmeyer in Conway, Arkansas. I've got more pictures of it somewhere, but this was eventually completed. We took it to many, many shows, many NSRA Street Rod Nationals. Believe it or not, this car was sold by my father in the late 1980s. I want to say about 1988. Paid off my mother's house with it. These photos here, just taken in the mid-80s, around 1985. Our front yard, some of the stuff that I grew up around. And this is a tradition that is going to continue. This is my young daughter in 1999 at one of the many, many dozens of car shows I subjected her to. I'm building a 32 Ford for her at her request because she wanted to keep up the family tradition. A family tradition we have had ever since I can remember, dating way back to the dawn of my family. This is a hobby that we've been involved with deeply, and I just love it. What can I say about my dad? My dad was born during the Depression, had a 9th grade education, and frankly was the smartest man I ever knew. Of course, with all fathers and sons, I had a complicated relationship with him, but I can honestly say without a shadow of a doubt, everything I know about building cars came from this man. He did the body work, he did the paint work, he did the electrical work, he did the welding, the chassis setup. The only thing he didn't do was interiors, and guess what? I have a brother who does award-winning automotive interiors. So the good news is 90% of the stuff that you build on cars, I can keep in-house. That's a wonderful benefit to have. But this is where it all started with my father, dirt track racing in the 1950s and 60s in Little Rock, Arkansas. Now what you're seeing here is just some examples of just some pictures taken from my dad's garage. These are some builds that he did for other people. 32 Fords, Model A Fords, you name it. He put it together. This yellow car, that's a 1940 Deluxe two-door sedan that my brother and he built. There's the finished product right there. My brother had that for a while back in the 1980s. Uh, some of these pictures, like I say, are scanned in. They're not quite fantastic images. We aren't professional photographers or anything. But as you can see, the shop at our house was always full of something. Later in my dad's life, around the late 1990s through the 2000s, he went back to starting working on a lot of shoebox Fords, the 48 through 53 model cars he loved. When he was racing on the dirt tracks, that Model A that you saw in the picture, that was a flathead powered car. My dad was a magician with a flathead Ford. It blew my mind how well he can make those things run. But this is a 1950 Ford that my father built, I guess, late 90s, around 2002, 2003. Of course, he liked the old Olds Fiesta hubcaps, the fender skirts, the classic 50s design because he was a child of the 50s. He did most of his growing up during that time. This was a really, really solid car that he acquired and turned it into something quite beautiful. Old school flames, black with the beautiful chrome, the spotlights, all of the highlights of the 1950s. Big white wall tires, again, the Olds Fiesta, and single bar spinner hubcaps as well. Um, it was just a look that he just really enjoyed doing. And he did a lot of these, but mostly towards the end of his life is when he turned to start doing a lot of this kind of work. You can see some more pictures of the 1950 Ford that my father built, accumulating with a nice picture of my daughter, like I said, in the very early 2000s. The next car I'm going to touch on, though, is an interesting story. In 1957, my dad lived in San Diego, California, and in 58, he bought what is going to be the next car you see, a 1957 Mercury Turnpike Cruiser. He bought this car, drove it home to Central Arkansas, taught my mom how to drive in it. And then, of course, life gets in the way, and he ended up having to sell it after the birth of my oldest brother. Many, many years later, in the mid 90s, he found the car in a very, very decrepit position, rusted down, needing tons of work. Frankly, a lot of people didn't even think it was salvageable. But my dad, being my dad, decided to buy the car, bring it home, and finish it out the way he always wanted to. He always wanted a black paint job on the car. He rebuilt the engine in it. It was an FE Mercury 430 cubic inch engine. Redid the suspension, redid the body work, actually had to put a new top on it because the top was so rusted down. He had to replace that. But he really built it into a fabulous 50s cruiser. To my knowledge, this car is now in a museum somewhere in Missouri. At least that's where it was the last time I heard. This car I'm going to show you is one of some importance. My dad built all types of cars, but what he was best known for was his 1932 Fords. The Deuce Coupe was his hallmark. It was the one that he was best known for, and it was the one he loved the most. This car is the last car he ever built. Here's some pictures from the day that we picked it up. As you can see, it was definitely not for the better for wear. Quite a basket case, as a matter of fact, but in true fashion, my dad took what most people would have thrown away and made it into something quite beautiful. This was the last Deuce Coupe he ever built. He wanted to go more of the 50s theme. He went with the classic mid to late 50s, early 60s idea, having a small block Chevrolet Power, which I vehemently disagree with. I hated the fact that he put small block Chevys in them, but he was an old school guy. That's the way they did it in the 50s. And I have to be honest, due to a number of things, small block Chevys do fit better into this particular platform. So I'm not going to argue with him. He did what he did. But this is the day we picked it up, as I noted, and brought it home. I think my daughter was about 9 years, or not even 9 years old, about 4 or 5 years old. So that would have put this in the late 1990s when we picked it up. But he got it home, and over the course of the next several years, started putting it together and building quite a gem of a beautiful car. You can see he had to replace pretty much everything on the sheet metal from that period down, put new floors in it. He was quite a body man. He always never claimed to be a body man or be able to work steel, but towards later on in his life, he got to where he was really, really good at all aspects of that. The car was immensely straight, as it had to be, because here in just a moment you'll see that he decided to go with a wonderful black paint job. Funny story here. My dad, when he was first building cars when I was alive, everything was red. Red was the color, hot rod red. The joke was that it didn't matter what color paint he put in the gun, it would come out red. And then he went through a period where he went through painting them orange. He had some that were yellow and all colors. But towards the end of his life, he started angling back to black, and specifically black with flames. Now, he did paint the car, but the flame jobs were done by a gentleman in Central Arkansas named Gary Lynn, who did a wonderful job on the flames as well. But for the most part, the later cars that he built were black. This one was no exception. And of course, he went again with the 50s theme like he did in the 1950 Ford. The big white wall tires, the big moon hubcaps, and full fendered was his hallmark as well. He didn't like highboys. He went with the full fendered look, but he went with the stock headlight bar, the 7-inch hot rod headlights, and just really created a beautiful car out of that rusted Hulk. Looking back at these photos is quite emotional for me because it brings back memories of my dad, very strong memories of my dad. He was really, really a gifted at this kind of work, and I'm very proud to put together this video kind of as a celebration of him and the work that he did and the impact that he had on me and my brothers. Well, I hope you have enjoyed this little walk down memory lane for me personally. I appreciate your indulgence in viewing this with me. Looking back at these photos is very emotional, brings back a lot of memories. I do have tons and tons of photos that I need to get scanned up, and of course, this probably won't be the last one of these that I produce because the volumes of work that my father did just needs to be appreciated, if by me, if by no one else. I appreciate your indulgence on that. Coming up very soon, we've got more footage coming up on the build for the Deuce Coupe that I'm building for my daughter. The AC Cobra, of course, more work on the shop, getting ready to do the insulation. And if the weather clears, we'll get the ceiling insulation blown in and try to have a video on that as well. Lots more stuff coming in. I appreciate your time. Have a wonderful day. Stay warm out there. We'll catch you next time.